Good evening and welcome to the, what's the date? October 19, 2020 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to have Council Member Spiegel lead us in the pledge. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ryan. Next item on our agenda is reflection, and I will just call for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is approval of minutes, and tonight we have 3 sets of minutes to approve. The first one being from Monday, March 9th. And I'll remind Councilmember Sales, she was absent for this one. So what is the pleasure of the council? I see Neil's hand. Good.
Move approval of the minutes for the work session of Monday, March 9th.
Mike?
Second.
All right, I'll call the roll. All those in favor say aye, and opposed say nay. Councilmember Cesma?
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wu?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Sales?
Abstain.
Okay, that carries 4-0 with 1 abstention. Councilmember Sales. Next is the minutes from the September 21st regular meeting. What is the pleasure of the council? Rob?
Mr. Mayor, move approval.
Okay, Mike?
Second.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Councilmember Sesma?
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wu?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Sales?
Aye.
Okay, carries unanimously. And next we have the minutes from the work session on Monday, October 12th. What is the pleasure of the council? Mike?
I'll move approval of the minutes from the October 12th work session.
Okay, Lorianne? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Councilmember Sesma?
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wu?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales?
Aye.
Okay, carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Next, we have appointments, and there are 2 sets of appointments tonight. The first is for the Economic and Business Development Committee. What's the pleasure of the council? I see Neil Harris. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor, I move the resolution confirming your appointments to the Economic and Business Development Committee, 3-year term expiring October 2023 for Henry Bernstein of Shear Partners, Inc., and for Philip Usatine.
Do we have a second? Mike, go ahead.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Councilmember Sesma?
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wu?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales?
Aye.
All right. And next, we have appointment to the Board of Supervisors of Elections. What is the pleasure of the council? Go ahead, Ryan.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the resolution confirming reappointment by the mayor to the Board of Supervisors of William Snyder for a 4-year term to expire in October of 2024.
Okay, Lorianne.
Second.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Councilmember Sesma?
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wu?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales?
Aye.
And tech team, if we could bring up Bill Snyder so we can deliver the oath. Hello, Bill. Welcome.
Hello. Just want to unmute myself. Okay.
There you go. Okay, so this is a little different since we're doing this virtually. Just raise your hand, your right hand, so everyone can see it, and then repeat after me. Everything but your name that you get to say. I state your name.
I, William Snyder,
Do affirm
do affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will be faithful
and that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance
and bear true allegiance
to the state of Maryland
to the state of Maryland
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of Board of Supervisors of Elections
execute the office of Board of Supervisors of Elections
as a member
as a member
according to the United States
according to the United States
and Maryland constitutions,
and Maryland constitutions,
the laws of this state,
the laws of this state,
and the Gaithersburg City Charter and Code.
and the Gaithersburg City Charter and Code.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Lynn Board, one of these days, I would love it if we can do a little editing of this, of the oath, which is like the clunkiest oath.
Yeah, it's long. I mean, I think it's longer than the presidential oath of office.
It is. It most definitely is. So
Okay.
You should treat the job accordingly.
Well, hopefully I passed that first test, and I have loved serving on the Board of Supervisors of Elections. It's work I really enjoy. I love working with the members, and I love being a part of Gaithersburg elections. So thank you all for supporting us and for us to be able to support the city.
Thank you.
Sure.
And we will see you soon, Bill.
Okay. Bye.
So next, so I pull it up. Tech team, if we could bring up Caroline Seiden, and we are going to take a look at we're going to do a courtesy review of an amendment to the schematic development plan over at Washingtonian Rio, Parcel H, for those of you keeping score, Parcel H. Welcome, Caroline.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. If we can pull up page 31, which is an aerial. Next, there's a page after that, Brian. There we go. Staff is before you tonight to present a courtesy review for application ASDP 8607-2020 and seeks guidance on how to proceed with this application. Subject properties include Washingtonian Rio and are zoned MXD, mixed use development. The subject property is the portion of Washingtonian Center west of the lake, shown in blue, and includes several restaurants, Uncle Julio's, the new True Food, Yard House restaurants, Target, Dick's, Kohl's, and the inline shops between those anchors. The property was annexed into the city of Gaithersburg as part of the Washingtonian Center annexation application X159, Resolution R 2091 on July 9th, 1991 by the Mayor and City Council. At the time of annexation, the property was zoned mixed-use development. The annexation agreement has been amended 5 times since then, the most recently on December 6th, 2008. The subject property received an amendment to schematic development plan approval, SDP W2, on June 3rd, 1998, which permitted up to 460,000 square feet of retail and restaurant uses on the site. The applicant is now requesting that medical office and private institutions of an educational, charitable, or philanthropic nature be added to the use chart for the SDP. Specifically, at this time, the applicant intends to convert one of the formerly retail spaces confronting Target to a medical spa. The applicant has no current plans for private institutions, but as the retail landscape continues to evolve, they would like to reserve the possibility of adding this as a future use. Both uses are listed as potential uses in the current sketch plan. We can go to page 32. This application comes before you pursuant to section 24-198C of the city code, which states that staff shall present the application to council as a courtesy review for amendments to an SDP involving a change in use. Following the courtesy review, the council shall either, 1, deem the application has a minor effect and thereby direct the planning commission to make a final decision, or 2, the council may direct that the amendment be referred to the planning commission for further evaluation, public hearing, and recommendation, and the council shall thereafter approve or disapprove the recommendation of the planning commission. Now we can go to page 33. Just this is the updated parking chart that shows there continues to be a surplus of 302 parking spaces on the site. The parking chart actually changes not one space with the changes in these uses at the time. There are no site improvements included as part of this proposal, and as already stated, there's no change in the parking. Based on these factors, staff recommends that the council find the application to have a minor impact and direct the planning commission to make a final decision on the amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Caroline, thanks for the presentation. This to me seems like the very definition of minor effect. So that's where I would be on this. Council members, where are you? I see some nodding heads. Ryan, go ahead.
I agree, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a minor effect that warrants deferral to the planning commission.
So in that case, Lynn, I suppose we need a motion.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, Rob had a question, I think.
I didn't see. Sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mike, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the one question that I have is, absent the requirement for medical professionals, the product being sold would count as retail? Is that correct?
Yeah, when this originally came in, we received it as a use and occupancy, and when we took a more careful look at it, we determined it was really more than just your kind of typical spa, which would have come in just as a retail, like if it was a nail salon or something like that. But because the use requires medical practitioners as part of their practice, and they're using IV drips for some of their procedures, we determined it was really more medical office than retail, and medical office just simply was not a list in the existing schematic development plan. So we just wanted to add it to the SDP.
Okay, and so would this use allow, for example, urgent or emergent care?
It would.
Okay. Well, I still think it's probably a minor use, although that causes me a little bit of pause. Mr. Mayor, I can't hear you.
Thank you, Rob. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. It's a minor use. I just had a question on, and this is probably subject to the purview or review of the planning commission, is I assume a treatment facility, which this would be, is subject to other regulations by the state and the county in terms of health.
Yeah. They would need to go through the county health department for whatever approvals they need through the health department, same as a lot of other uses in the county that the city doesn't regulate certain things, that they would get a use and occupancy through us, but other things through the county.
And so that includes regulation of medical waste as well, right? So
right.
There would be additional requirements for a facility like that in terms of
absolutely.
the waste. Okay. Yeah, I think it still constitutes a minor use or minor amendment or change. So it is kind of a retail, but it's a little bit more than that. So, I guess it's more regulated than a tattoo parlor, which wouldn't be allowed, I think, in this site, right?
A tattoo parlor is not permitted in the MXD zone, I don't believe. So this would be regulated in the same way a doctor's office would be regulated.
Okay.
That's essentially how we would be treating it.
Okay.
All right, we'll go to Neil.
I would like to echo the comments about this being a minor change. I mean, basically, what we're seeing, given the economic situation of retail in general, is medical type facilities, light medical, not full hospitals or anything, but moving into these retail spaces where there's plenty of parking and public access. So I agree. I think this is a minor change and something that we'll probably be seeing more of as we go forward.
Ryan.
I was just going to make a motion unless there are any other questions.
Make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the council deem the application has a minor effect and direct the planning commission to make a final decision.
Okay, I saw Neil's hand first. Go ahead, Neil.
Second the motion.
Okay, I will call the roll. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Councilmember Cesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
All right, carries unanimously. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have public comments, and I will invite our tech team to play their instructional video before we get started.
Good evening. If you've connected to the meeting tonight via Zoom and you're on a desktop or a laptop and you wish to make a public comment, we can't currently see or hear you. What you need to do, please, is wiggle your mouse around and look towards the bottom center of your screen. You should see a raise hand button. Go ahead and click on that now for us, please. Alternatively, if you've connected in via telephone, you can press *9.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So this is the time when the mayor and council like to hear from anybody on any topic that's not a public hearing topic. And tonight we have no public hearing. So any topic you'd like, we ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. State your name and address or neighborhood for the record. And as our tech team just noted, if you'd like to speak, use the Zoom raise hand function, and I will ultimately call on you. So tech team, if you could bring up Barry Silberman, and we'll start with Barry. And Barry, once you come on, please just unmute yourself, state your name and address, and go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Barry Silberman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Okay, I was just following the instructions. My purpose to sit in tonight was I am the president of the Downtown Flats at Crown Homeowner Association. One of our residents suggested that you were having a topic that I should sit in on for tonight. So I'm sitting in. I've never done this with any of your meetings before. So I believe they told me that you guys were going to be airing out and adopting, I guess, what the county has for making sure that people like me go through an online course. So that's what I thought I was doing here tonight.
Okay. Well, thanks for your testimony, Barry, and hopefully, this won't be the last time that you testify before us, and we appreciate that you came out. So tonight we are looking to introduce an ordinance that would bring in the common ownership community, or Committee on Common Ownership. I forgot it's CCOC. I forgot exactly how the acronym goes. Ryan, help me out. What's the acronym?
Commission on Common Ownership Communities.
That's exactly what I meant to say. I knew it. I was just testing Ryan there. So what will happen is, if we hear a little bit of background on the issue tonight, and then if we move to introduce it, then we will have a public hearing at which there will be a full presentation, and we'll have an open record for everybody who's interested to comment on. And at that time, you'll get a chance to hear about everything that the CCOC adoption would entail. So keep an eye on it. Later this evening, we will be voting on whether or not to introduce. And if we do, then we'll follow that process. Tech team, if you could bring up Dina Saunders. And Dina is a pro at this, so I will just say, Dina, state your name and go right ahead.
I'm Dina Saunders, president of the Audubon HOA. Good evening, city council members. First, I want to say thank you for voting against the crematorium. Good move on that. You saw that it was a good thing for the east side. Now, with that in mind, you want my HOA, Audubon Square, to enter into joining the CCOC? That's not a good thing for the east side. As stated in March when we testified, this would be an unnecessary hardship for my community. Our management office has already stated in a letter to you that they voted against this. What is unnecessary is this: why now? Why can't you decide on this next year, and perhaps the financial issues would be better? Having the homeowners doing this during a pandemic is not in the homeowners' best interest at heart. They're struggling to put food on their tables and maybe stand in line for food banks for assistance. And our HOA cannot afford to take on that extra cost without raising our assessments. We're a small HOA, about 200 homes, and maybe a larger HOA can take on the extra cost and pay that fee for them, but not ours. And if we join the CCOC, what do we get out of this? Where is all that money going into that's collected? I'd like some answers. We'd like some answers on this. If we join this and homeowner has a grievance, how are they going to pay for it when they're already struggling? To make this long story short, why is this an all or nothing? Why can't it be decided next year? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dina. Again, in terms of like some of the questions, I'm sure every one of those questions would be answered if we voted to introduce and then go, initiate a public hearing process on this. There'll be presentations and chance to ask questions and what have you. So just putting that out there. Everyone's welcome to say whatever they wish now. Tech team, if you could bring up Michael Dennis. And Michael, once you come up, just state your name and address or neighborhood and go right ahead.
Certainly. My name is Michael Dennis. I am living at 137 Timberbrook Lane, apartment 301 in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I'm the treasurer for the Timberbrook Condominium Board of Directors. The Board of Directors of the Timberbrook Condominium writes to oppose your initiative to opt into the jurisdiction of the Montgomery County Commission on Common Ownership Communities. This opt-in action would allow another bureaucracy to levy fees of $5 per unit per year as a thinly veiled tax increase to perform invasive regulatory functions which no one has requested. Please remember that several years ago, the city took hold of the HOAs in the city, which asked if the associations had any interest in joining the COCC. And as I recall, between 96% and 98% of the associations which responded voted no to joining the COCC. In the 25-year history of the Timberbrook Condominium, we have 168 units. We have never had any reason or event which have used any of the services provided by the COCC. We have had occasion to enroll in their board member training sessions, and the incremental cost of attending those sessions is more than covered by the approximately $670,000 of real estate taxes which the unit owners of Timberbrook pay annually to Montgomery County and the city. So we ask you to please not waste your time on this issue and to proceed with other things. Again, Michael Dennis, treasurer of Timberbrook Condominium. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Michael. Tech team, if you could bring up Diane Golden, that would be great. Diane, once you come up, just state your name and address or neighborhood and go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Diane Golden and I live in the Kentlands. And I'm resident of the city, therefore I'm a resident of the city of Gaithersburg. After attending your March meeting and looking at the present resources available to Gaithersburg city residents regarding the relationship between residents, homeowners associations, and their management companies, and reviewing information online regarding the mission of the CCOC, it just makes good sense for the residents of the city of Gaithersburg to have access to the resources this commission provides. Simply put, as it stands now, our residents have no access to the information and the services that the CCOC provides. and no voice if there are issues where they live. Okay, so $5 a year per household would enable every resident to access all the resources that they offer. At the meeting in March, someone said, and even today, that there are residents who can't easily afford this fee. But I would like to ask, could that same resident or residents afford legal counsel in the event that they thought they needed it? I also believe that sometimes homeowners associations and other residents might not know a situation and may not realize that people would like access. They may have an issue that they want to keep quiet. So if they needed these resources, they would have no recourse, no resources that they could turn to for guidance. I still say that $5 a year, which is 52 cents, less than 42 cents a month, is a bargain. Not being in the CCOC can put residents in a vulnerable position to be taken advantage of. I was both a classroom teacher and an ESOL teacher for 35 years with MCPS, and I'm proud to live in the city of Gaithersburg, which is one of the most ethnically and culturally diverse small cities in the US. But this distinction brings an obligation to meet the needs of our diverse population. So upon investigation, I was happy to learn that the CCOC provides forms in quite a few languages, as well as access to volunteer interpreters so that if any resident has the need to get info or help from them, language is not a barrier. Excuse me, but not joining the CCOC is a barrier for every city resident, since there are no other agencies available to us that can provide the services that the CCOC provides if an issue arises that involves where they live. This puts the city of Gaithersburg residents at a distinct disadvantage in terms of often their biggest asset, their home, and possibly their quality of life. Please vote for the city of Gaithersburg to join the CCOC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, tech team, if you could bring up Deborah Wenzel. Deborah, once you come up, just unmute yourself and state your name and address or neighborhood and begin.
Deborah Wenzel, 11 Arch Place in city of Gaithersburg. So my name is Deb Wenzel. I've been following the issue of the city of Gaithersburg joining the CCOC, and I spoke in favor of joining it at the March 9th, 2020 council meeting. I've reviewed the CCOC website very thoroughly, and I do have some comments to make about joining. I think I had seen that it was $5 a year per household for the dues, and that there was the $50 fee to file a complaint. But I did call and ask if that fee could be waived if someone was on a fixed income and they were not able to afford it. And I was informed that that was the case, that it has been waived in the past and it would be waived. I know that the CCOC will not accept a complaint from a member or resident against an association unless they have first followed any written procedures or remedies in the association documents governing the resolution of disputes. And I know that there has sort of been some miscommunication about the CCOC taking 6 months to address a complaint, and that there's a backlog of 2 years. Again, I looked into that and found out that the complaint is filed, it's 24 hours until the other party is notified, about 30 days to mediation, and 90 days to a hearing. So the only time that the case has ever been, held up is when it's from the other party. For some reason, there's a reason why it's being held up. I also read on the CCOC website about the free, about the online training for the ownership board members. And it's not just for the board members, it's mandated for the board members, but it's also for any resident to take. But the board members are mandated that have been elected or appointed after January 1st, 2016 to complete the training after 90 days. The training is like 2 hours, and I would imagine that there'd be data to show that there have been far fewer complaints since this was implemented by the CCOC. Under the CCOC procedures, decisions are made by panel chairs who are local attorneys that volunteer thousands of hours of their time and expertise on behalf of the CCOC and the citizens of Montgomery County and the county attorney to issue a final decision and order. I've also spoken in person to Kevin Roman with Gaithersburg Neighborhood Services that provides several services, just to see if his service, if he can help any HOA homeowner with any type of assistance if they have an issue to resolve with their board of directors or management company. And he told me that unfortunately they could not, and only the CCOC can. So I think the dues and fees are nominal compared to the cost of a lawyer. The 2-hour training doesn't sound unreasonable.
Deb, you're out of time.
Can I
Tech team, just hold off for a second. I would have given her another like half a sentence, but let's go with Renee Duffin, please. Renee, when you come on, just unmute yourself and state your name and address or neighborhood and go right ahead.
Yes, my name is Renee Duffin. I'm a resident of the condos at the Vistas of Washingtonian Woods. I called in because I wanted to learn more about our consideration for joining the CCOC. I, for one, am in support of exploring that. My community has some concerns with how it has been managed and are concerned that there are some activities that aren't financially beneficial for us and aren't meeting our needs. And we would like to have something available to us to be able to consult with and possibly take action with in order to go up against our HOAs if it turns out that they are not doing as they are supposed to be doing. And that's all.
Thank you very much. Tech team, if you could bring up Lindsay Golden. Lindsay, once you come on, unmute yourself, state your name or name, address, and or neighborhood, and go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Golden, and I've been a resident of Gaithersburg City for 2 years, living in the only area for over 35 years prior to our move, which is under the auspices of the CCOC. I took for granted that the commission served all of Montgomery County. While I personally never had the need to utilize their services, I know of others who did, and they were very impressed with the services and resources that the CCOC offered. The commission, made up of attorneys, members of HOAs, residents, and management companies, brings a diverse range of experience and expertise. Joining the CCOC would bring a valuable resource to the citizens of Gaithersburg. Thank you to the mayor and the city council for considering and voting to enter into the CCOC.
Thank you very much. Tech team, if you could bring up Wayne Broadfield. Wayne, when you come on, just unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood, and go ahead.
Yes, hi, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thank you very much for the time. I am a resident of Shady Grove Village. I was calling originally to learn more about the CCOC, but I think that's been beaten with a dog. So I'll let that go on and listen to the council later on. But I am an informed voter, and I am volunteering my time in the upcoming election. And I am aware that the number of voting sites has been reduced due to numerous complications with COVID, and et cetera. I was wondering if the city council or maybe you, Mr. Mayor, can tell what additional steps you are doing to inform the public that their voting precincts might be closed due to them being relocated. And I am just concerned about people walking in and not realizing there's the local school that used to be a polling place is no longer a voting precinct. I do know that there are mailings going out, but I'm just wondering if there's additional day of or anything going that way that might redirect voters to their closest polling locations. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the question. I'll just note very quickly that because this is not a city election, this election is administered by the Montgomery County Board of Elections. And so our entire role here is just to support the County Board of Elections. And I'm not conversant in all of the outreach efforts that they're making, but as they do, we tweet it, we share it, we do our best to help get the word out. Next, tech team, if you could bring up Victor Lau. And Victor, once you come up, just unmute yourself, state your name, address, or neighborhood, and go ahead.
My name is Victor Leo, and I represent the board of Quince Orchard Park Community Association. On behalf of QOP, I would like to express the community's strong opposition to the city proposed amendment to Chapter 2-6 of the City Code. The mandatory membership in the Montgomery County Commission on Common Ownership Community would not be beneficial to our neighborhood or others in Gaithersburg for many reasons. First, the stated mission of CCOC is to adjudicate on behalf of the citizens of common ownership community within Montgomery County. However, CCOC attempts to apply the same standards to all communities, regardless of size, demographics, and other unique factors, and in doing so, often limits a community's ability to resolve issue in the most suitable manner. Decisions made by the CCOC become the standard to which all community must comply. However, standards applied on a macro level ignore the unique needs of each neighborhood and could be detrimental over time. Second, the CCOC also regulate election, budgets, adoptions, and enforcement procedures. Community with an established board of directors and professional management rarely, if ever, needs such regulation. While such oversight may occasionally be necessary, we believe that the vast majority of the community in the city operate in a legal and professional manner. Where this is not the case, the existing judicial process is available to provide oversight and enforcement. Third, the CCOC purports to offer a program to resolve disputes with adequate due process protections. In practice, the dispute resolution process is unwieldy, time-consuming, and very expensive. The CCOC process can often take more than 12 months to complete, after which either party still has the option to file an appeal in circuit court. The time spent at mediation sessions, hearings, and for preparation is insignificant for community volunteers who often must take time off from work to participate. The CCOC enforcement process also places an unreasonable financial burden on the community association, which must be represented by legal counsel at all hearings. Fourth, the CCOC goal of educating homeowner and board members is commendable, and we do support such measures. However, much of this education could be obtained from the Community Association Institute and professionals such as community association attorneys and auditors. Lastly, the annual fee, currently $5 per unit per year, creates an expense of approximately $2,000 for Quince Orchard Park. While this is a small amount relative to our total budget, it is not insubstantial and would be better spent on improved neighborhood. For a small community with very limited budget, it would be a much larger impact. For all these reasons, we object to the amendment of City Code.
Thank you, Victor. Tech team next, if you could bring up Paul Senkula. And Paul, once you come up, just unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood, and go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Paul Sensula, and I'm a resident at 31 Booth Street, which is a condominium in the Kentlands. I would like to strongly encourage the city of Gaithersburg to join the CCOC. I see membership as a very affordable network to ensure that condo residents receive much needed support. As one important example, training offered by the CCOC gives residents who are thinking about being involved in their condo association more information about the responsibilities. This training would give board members the updated and important information they need regarding policies and procedures that they need to follow. Another important benefit of the CCOC is helping to resolve disputes between residents and their associations. Montgomery County does not have any other office or agency that currently performs these roles. The city of Gaithersburg, it should be noted, is only one of 5 cities in Montgomery County that have not joined. The cost of only $5 per year per unit, again, that's $5 per year per unit, is a great value for Gaithersburg condo residents. Again, I would strongly encourage the city to join the CCOC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tech team, if you could bring up Stephen Kaufman. It's Steve is a vet. You know what to do, Steve. State your name and go right ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Steve Kaufman, Secretary Audubon Square. Good evening, City Council members. It's nice to see everybody again. What I've heard so far this evening is basically the west side of Gaithersburg can afford the CCOC and the east can't. At a time when individuals and families are unemployed by the millions, most or some are scraping to make ends meet, and many having to rely on food pantries, I can't believe that the city would even consider any actions that would literally force homeowner associations to raise their dues. Audubon Square was prepared to introduce the 2021 budget without any increase in dues based on the fact that people in Montgomery County are struggling. The unemployment rate is almost tripled and is at 8% or higher currently. If you just drive down any of our city residential streets, they're covered in vehicles that should be parked in businesses instead of sitting idle at home. Some of them have expired tags as the owners can't afford the renewals, and yet they sneak out to line up at the food distribution centers on the weekends. And yet still the city council is considering to force HOAs, particularly some of our smaller ones, to either absorb the additional fees or pass them on to the homeowners. How do we, the homeowners association, explain to these people that we can't even justify asking them to meet the current obligations, yet we're going to ask them to pay an additional $5? Our delinquency rate is almost doubled and we can't in good conscience pursue these funds, so how do we pay for the CCOC? Given the homeowner is not only required to pay the $5 annual fee, but a $50 fee to file the complaint as noted, again, most of our homeowners can't afford that. They're barely making ends meet. So once again, I'm going to ask that City Council reconsider, and that the Audubon Square is in opposition to it. Families of the East Side, families of color, families from the Hispanic community, and families on fixed income simply can't afford it. We don't have to pay for the Better Business Bureau. We don't have to pay for Montgomery County Consumer Affairs. So why should we be held hostage and be forced to pay for the CCOC? Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you for the time. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, Steve. Tech team, if you could bring up Sherry Kerner, please. Sherry, when you come on, just unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood, and go right ahead.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Sherry Kerner, One Arch Place, resident of the city of Gaithersburg. I have 2 points to share with you this evening regarding the CCOC issue. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the City Council for considering this very important topic. First, I believe that now more than ever, we need to unify as a community. Please allow all the citizens of Gaithersburg to benefit from CCOC's resources of information, diversity of knowledge, and skills. Second, I can tell you personally that last year I spent $8,500 on legal fees in an issue that affected the title to my property and others. I was not just fighting for myself, but for others who were being taken advantage of in a confusing yet very important issue. This was just not a theoretical problem. It was a very real problem. I believe that this issue could have been resolved in a mutually agreeable way to both sides had we had the opportunity to be part of the CCOC and with little expense. Please, please, council members and mayor, give your constituents access to this resource. Please vote tonight to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tech team, if you could bring up Carol Kaplan. That would be great. Carol, when you come up, just unmute yourself and state your name, address, or neighborhood. Go right ahead.
Hi, Carol Kaplan, the Kentlands in the city of Gaithersburg. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm so happy that you're considering allowing Gaithersburg city residents to utilize the services of the Montgomery County CCOC. I'd like to note that I've listened this evening to comments and I've read a number of the letters that were sent to the council. And I find it curious that almost all of those in opposition to joining the CCOC are either representing boards or representing management companies. The people in favor are residents, unit owners, property owners, and voters. They are the ones that will vote in this community. Boards and management companies don't vote. With that said, I'd like to say that ever since I learned about the CCOC, I couldn't understand why we are one of the only municipalities in Montgomery County not to belong. The advantages and benefits are numerous and benefit HOA owners, HOA boards, and the city at large by improving the quality of life and the professionalism of our boards and their management companies. The CCOC is much more than a mediator between owners and their boards and management companies, although that is a very important role. First, we should know that they train board members to do their jobs as professionals and to educate owners on their rights and responsibilities. The CCOC provides best practices and standards so that when our HOAs are running meetings or resolving disputes or handling complaints, that they do so in ways that are beneficial to all. The CCOC also provides us with important information regarding the laws and policies that govern common ownership communities in the county. And finally, it provides an authoritative body that can hear and decide disputes without anyone having to incur expensive legal fees and court costs. The CCOC is knowledgeable, helpful, and ready to assist Gaithersburg residents. And lastly, I find that for $5 per year per unit, I find it hard to believe that 40 cents per month for a homeowner is something that is too difficult in exchange for the services received. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next tech team, you can bring up Mary Fehlig. And Mary, just state your name, address, or neighborhood and go right ahead.
Good evening. This is Mary Fehlig, and I live in 1 Arch Place in Kentlands. And I, again, at the March of meeting, I did make a comment about an incident that it would have been really beneficial to have the option of a third-party mediator. And listening to people talk about the burden, the cost, you know, in my situation, it was, I had, because of bad advice from the management company, I had to hire a lawyer to try to reclaim a $4,500 that I was going to lose. So I was paying $500 to my lawyer, and then I was obviously indirectly paying the lawyer's fee for the homeowners association, all because of just poor advice that I had gotten through the management company. It would have been very beneficial to have a third-party mediator in that case. And then just basically, I just feel like the people that are running the boards are volunteers. And so I think the opportunity for them to have access to this training and then access to a resource to help in any mediation would be beneficial. And also the comment here, many of these, is that residents just don't feel like they have a voice. And this will give them an opportunity to know when there is an issue. First, of course, take it to your neighbors. But then this gives away, you know, that was another thing, because then you have to fight with your neighbors. It would have been nice to have someone to mediate that process. So I definitely would encourage you to consider including this for the residents of Gaithersburg. Thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you, Mary. Do we have any other speakers from the public tonight? Again, just use the Zoom, raise your hand button, or if you're on the phone, you can hit *9, which will do the same thing. And going once, going twice, not seeing any more. Okay, we will end it there. Obviously, a lot of testimony.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize for interrupting, but there are 3 people who still have their hands raised.
Oh, I don't know how I did not see that. Okay. Now I do. Tech team, please bring up Tom Golden. Tom, just state your name, address, and our neighborhood. Go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Tom Golden. I live in the Kentlands. Just to note, I'm the 3rd person with the same last name speaking tonight. Just want to let you know we're not all in the same family. I don't have any association or relationship with the other Goldens that spoke, but I actually do support what they said, and I do support everybody here who requested, or everybody tonight who requested, that the mayor and the council continue to consider and ultimately vote to opt into the CCOC. I can't see how having an additional representation of person's needs and a outside mediator if there are issues, if an individual unit owner has problems with their board, that they have someone to turn to in a simple, streamlined, and cost-effective manner, as opposed to having to make the decision whether to pursue legal action if they feel that a board is acting not in the interests of the actual residents, if in fact the board is acting for its own interests or in the interests of its management company and not in the interests of all the unit owners. I was at the March meeting as well, and I just want to reiterate how important I think being Gaithersburg joining the CCOC would be in terms of providing a useful service to its property owners. And so please, Mayor and the council, continue to consider involvement with the CCOC and ultimately vote to join. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Tech team, if you can bring up Gail Mraz, that'd be great. And Gail, when you come up, just unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood, and go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Gail Mraz. I live at 23 Arch Place in the Kentlands. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I promise I'll be very, very brief. I've been a resident of Gaithersburg for the past 7 years, 6 years as a renter and 1 year as an owner. I'm familiar with the CCOC from my previous residence in Alney before moving here to Gaithersburg, and know firsthand that they will be an asset to our community. Their website states that they provide information, assistance, and impartial dispute resolutions to all owners, tenants, residents, board of directors, and management companies. To me, this is a win-win for all. Working together as a community with the CCOC will only strengthen the city of Gaithersburg by providing valuable resources to all of its residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tech team, if you could bring up Yamil Hernandez. And Yamil, when you get up, just unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood for the record.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Jamil Hernandez from the Kentlands. My comments are related to the CCOC. We all live in Gaithersburg for many reasons. One of the things I like about Gaithersburg is the ability to reach out and interact with our elected representatives and city staff easily. In my experience, working and communicating with city council members, the mayor, and staff has been simple and a pleasure. Opting into the CCOC would take that away and send it to a county structure that is less responsive, less accountable, more bureaucratic, and less able to meet the needs of our city residents. In my opinion, the choice shouldn't be binary, only to opt in or out of the CCOC. Instead, the city should explore other solutions that more effectively address the valid concerns of each stakeholder group, such as homeowners, tenants, residents, HOAs, and others. For example, a mediation option has been suggested, or a city-run version of the CCOC could be established. There are better ways to do this that should all be explored prior to considering the CCOC. The self-governing nature of our city is a tremendous asset. There are so few incorporated cities in Montgomery County, and I hope you will work to find better alternatives than the CCOC. That's my statement, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And tech team, I don't have a name, I just have a number that if you can bring up the person with the last three numbers, 245. And whoever you are, go ahead and state your name and address or neighborhood and go right ahead. Are you there? You still seem to be muted.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, this is Connie Orr. I live in 31 Booth Street in the Kentlands, and I would love the city of Gaithersburg would join the CCOC. We've had a number of issues in the condominium development that I live in with security issues. And I think if our development had the resources from the council, that it could really help us. Since none of the people on the management company live here, they don't feel the issues like we do, and the pain and the dollars spent on things. So anyway, I just love us to join. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. And I see one more hand, but Gail already spoke, and you know, we have a rule, everyone gets a chance to speak one time. If you have additional comments, please feel free to send it to them to us in writing. And again, at this point, we haven't even introduced yet. If we do introduce, then we'll go to public hearing and everyone will get a chance to further get on the record, both orally and through written testimony. Thank you, tech team. Unless I'm missing anybody, I think we're good here. Brian, you're not seeing anybody. I'm not, right?
That's everyone, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, next is from the mayor and council. Again, we'll get back to the CCOC question a little bit later when we have their introduction before us. But from the mayor and council, we're going to start with Councilmember Cesma.
Thank you, Mayor. Don't have a whole lot to talk about tonight, except remind everybody we have an election, the general election for the United States of America on 2 weeks from tomorrow. That's actual election day. But if you're a resident of Maryland, resident of Gaithersburg, you could have been voting already. You could have voted by mail. You can still do that. Someone had asked earlier about reminding everybody that our regular polling places for these elections are not going to be open this year. Instead, we have voting centers and early voting sites, and then every high school in Montgomery County is a voting center, so you'll be able to vote at those places on election day on November 3rd. For Gaithersburg, the residents of Gaithersburg, Gaithersburg High School will be a voting center, but we will also have a voting center at the activity center at Boer Park. And early voting begins on October 24th. There are a number of voting or ballot boxes, deposit boxes located within the city, including at the Board of Elections on North Frederick Avenue. The Boer Park Activity Center already has a ballot drop-off box. On the 24th, there'll be an additional ballot drop-off box at the youth center at Robertson Park. There's also a drop-off box at Gaithersburg High School now. There's one at Quince Orchard High School. I think there's one at Wood High School, and there is one at Watkins Mill High School, which are all going to be voting centers as well. So early voting begins on October 24th and it goes through November 2nd. If you already request your mail ballot, you can submit that at any time up till, but it must be postmarked or deposited in one of the ballot boxes, ballot drop-off boxes by election day. So every election is important. I think a lot of people feel this one is particularly important to all of us. You do make a plan to vote, whether it's by mail at the early voting, during voting, or on election day. So there may be, if you want to stand in line, if you don't feel safe, then voting early is an option, and voting by mail continues to be an option. So again, I encourage you to vote, exercise your franchise. This is a right. It's not a privilege, it's a right. And you all have it. If you're registered to vote and you're an American citizen, then you should vote. The next topic is Halloween, which is a week from Saturday. A number of us have had calls about whether or not the city or the county has canceled trick or treating. And the answer to that is no, we can't do that. I don't think we could literally do that. But if you trick or treat, or if you take your children to trick or treat, there are a lot of caveats. Now, the city and the county are both offering a number of activities that are low contact activities, but still would be fun for revelers, Halloween revelers of all ages. You should look at our city website to take a look at some of those opportunities. Some of those activities begin this week and go through. But if you are one of those families that has decided to celebrate in the usual way, observe the usual way, trick or treating, then please be aware that not every door, not every home had provided treats last year is going to do that this year. So if there are no lights on or decorations on, then you should pass that house by. We encourage you now, everybody wears a mask on Halloween, but you should also make sure that you have a cloth face covering over your mouth and nose this year under your mask. We are in a pandemic. It's important to remember that. Cases are rising in not the United States, and want Halloween to be a super spreader event. So that means social distancing. That means washing your hands frequently. That means avoiding crowds, especially indoors where it's easier for the virus to be transmitted in a crowded room. Again, a proper social distancing and just respecting each other and giving each other space. We want everybody to have fun, but we also want everybody to be safe. And being safe is being responsible for yourself and your own actions. So those common rules that we've been following for the last few months are important. But we hope that you all have a happy Halloween. You participate in some of the other activities that have been suggested. The county, Montgomery County, has provided guidance to all its residents on different ways that you can celebrate and observe Halloween. And so we hope that you'll follow those instructions and do the things that you want to do, but do it safely. And that's all I've got for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. We'll go to Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Nothing further.
Okay, we'll go to Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I share a few updates, I do have an announcement to make. The mayor and city council are seeking to fill one vacancy on the Animal Control Board, one alternate representative of the Montgomery County Veterinary Medical Association, or shall have training and or experience in the proper training or care of animals position. The Animal Control Board reviews and acts on decisions and orders of the city's Animal Control Division. Among the issues board members deal with are revocation, suspension, and failure to renew or issue pet shop licenses, impoundment of animals, governing of hearings, and recommending changes to the city's animal control ordinances. The board consists of 5 members and 2 alternatives who are appointed by the mayor with the approval of the city council. Members serve staggered 3-year terms and meet as needed. All veterinarian animal training or care applicants must either reside in the corporate city limits or work at a veterinary animal training care facility in the corporate city limits. Resumes and letters of interest should be submitted via mail to Mayor and City Council, 31 South Summit Avenue, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20877, or email to cityhall@gaithersburgmd.gov. This position will remain open until filled. For more information, visit the city's website or contact Manager of Animal Services, Simone Williams, at 240 805-1172. All right. And just a few updates. The last time we met, the mayor and council were heading to the Maryland Municipal League's annual fall meeting. Some of the issues and breakout sessions covered budgetary forecasts, the upcoming legislative session for the Maryland General Assembly, racial equity and social justice, and reimagining policing in the 21st century, just to name a few. And most of us attended, and I'm sure have much to bring back and apply to the work we do in the city. On October 7th, I joined youth leaders, parents, influencers, and fellow elected officials at the National Kids Rally Against Bullying in recognition of Youth Suicide Awareness Day. The city presented a virtual proclamation to city resident Kavanaugh Bell because of his continued advocacy to raise awareness of youth-related suicide prevention. And I shared some tips and resources that are offered by the city of Gaithersburg. Information is available on their Facebook page at National Kids Rally Against Bullying. Every Thursday, my church, since the pandemic, started a food distribution. This is in Rockville at Mount Calvary Baptist Church. So every Thursday at 5:00 p.m., cars start lining up and everyone walks away with something. To get more information, please contact Reverend Moultrie at 301-424-8717. This food distribution was scheduled to end at the end of the month, but it has been slated to continue indefinitely. And all of these pickups happen via drive-through. Masks are required, and you can contact the church for more information. Last Thursday, I joined Seneca Creek Watershed Partners for their Get Acquainted walking tour of Victory Farm Park, one of our 30 parks in the city. My first time there, but it was a beautiful scenic hidden gem. I absolutely love this park and have so many ideas that were shared with me and city staff that joined us as well, about things we can do to provide some cultural amenities within the park. And so looking forward to learning more about those initiatives. On behalf of the mayor and city council, that evening on Thursday after the walk, I was able to testify at the annual Maryland Department of Transportation 6-year consolidated transportation hearing, to provide updates about some of the transportation concerns and priorities that we'd like to see addressed in the coming months. What else? And I also attended the Gaithersburg Economic and Business Development Committee meeting on Friday, where I was able to listen to the committee members discuss some of the questions included in the Future of Lake Forest Mall survey. If you haven't taken the survey, that survey is still available online, and you can visit our city website. It's only 20 questions. And lastly, on Saturday, I participated in the Walk This Way event with the Rotary Club of Washington Global Montgomery Satellite, and other special guests, including our mayor, joined us for this walk to raise awareness about breast cancer. And we want to thank the Montgomery County Department of Cancer Support for their attendance and for bringing resources and information and answering questions for our attendees. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And I meant to thank you for giving the testimony on our behalf on Thursday. I had a conflict, and so every now and then, as a mayor, you have to rely on your council vice president, and Lorianne was right there to take the baton and step up. So thank you. And next we will go to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, my puppy Rosie says that we should allow representation from pets on the Animal Control Board, and it's unfair that only humans are there and the pets aren't represented. So I just wanted to make sure she knew that. She's too young. She's only 3 months old, so she's not eligible herself. But I thought we should let you know her opinion.
Duly noted.
All right, thank you. She'll be making appearances at future council meetings, I'm sure. So I also attended the Economic and Business Development Committee meeting as the liaison, and got to listen in on lots of feedback relating to the future of Lake Forest Mall. I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, the city staff is doing a great job at soliciting feedback in the form of focus groups and the online survey that Lorianne mentioned. In addition, there is an opportunity to participate further by participating in virtual public forums. There are 6 different forums, I believe. And if you're interested, there is information on the city's website. You go to the city's project page and look at the Lake Forest Mall project, and you can sign up and register. There's a limited attendance, I believe, of 30 people per session. So if you're interested in giving direct feedback and participating in a forum for one of the most important projects to guide the city's future, that would be a great place to participate. And I'd also like to give a shout out to the to an event that was held on the 15th. The Black and Brown Coalition for Educational Equity and Excellence held a virtual accountability forum where their leadership was able to interact with the superintendent of schools and others to make sure that the minority students in our school system are having their needs addressed. And I thought it was a really great session in that the superintendent and others were asked to give themselves grades on how well they were performing it against standards of meeting the educational needs of students. And we're pretty open about giving themselves not such good grades in some areas. So hopeful that this leads to better outcomes. And I'll close with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. We'll go to Councilmember Spiegel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I have a formal announcement. The City of Gaithersburg is seeking residents to serve on an ad hoc mayor and city council compensation review committee. Every 4 years, an ad hoc committee is formed and charged with reviewing the compensation of elected officials of other jurisdictions in the region, examining the current workload of the Gaithersburg Mayor and City Council, and making recommendations for compensation adjustments as appropriate. The committee is also charged with reviewing and recommending adjustments to stipends for the Planning Commission, Board of Appeals, and Historic District Commission members. The ad hoc committee's recommendations are advisory in nature, and the mayor and city council have the option of accepting, rejecting, or modifying recommendations. It's anticipated that appointments will be made on November 16th, 2020, and the committee's recommendations are anticipated to come before the mayor and city council in March of 2021. To be considered, please send a letter of interest and a resume to Mayor and City Council Services via email to mccservices@gaithersburgmd.gov or to Gaithersburg City Hall, 31 South Summit Avenue, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20877. The deadline for submission is November 6th, 2020. For more information, please contact Human Resources Director Kim Yocklin by email at kim.yocklin, that's YOCKLIN, at gaithersburgmd.gov, or call 301-258-6327, or visit our website, www.gaithersburgmd.gov. I want to echo the comments that Councilmember Cesma made about voting, and also the short response that the mayor offered to the member of the public who asked about our role as a city in this national election year. And I'll just sort of echo what the mayor said, that we try to do what we can to reiterate, to share, to put out public information from the county board of elections or the state board of elections, as the case may be, and to share information on secure ballot drop box areas within the city and around the city, and use our social media voice to support those efforts, even though the city itself doesn't really run or manage the elections in the even years. But I appreciate the interest, and I'm glad to see that the city is taking on some supporting role as appropriate. And I'm sure that as we lead up to Election Day, we'll continue to use our social media channels and our other methods of communication with the public to remind folks where they can vote, how they can vote, what information they can get from the county and from the state as appropriate. I actually dropped my ballot in a secure Dropbox location in the city today. So it's a very timely thing to be discussing for me and my family, and we were glad to be able to do it. It was very easy to use the drop boxes and very convenient. So I encourage folks who are using mail-in ballots to do that. It also makes sure that your ballot arrives in time to be counted if you drop it in a box before Election Day, as opposed to using the mail, the U.S. Postal Service. I want to echo what Council Vice President Sales said about the MML Fall Conference and thank everybody who was involved in that. Educationally, it was a really good 2-day virtual conference. We're all chomping at the bit to have in-person conferences again when it's safe, but we're not there yet by any means. And so the Maryland Municipal League has really done great work developing and hosting these virtual conferences. And there was a lot of really good discussion about important topics, difficult topics that local governments in Maryland and really all over the country are dealing with right now. Great educational opportunities. So thanks to MML. Our membership, involvement, and leadership in that organization continues to pay huge dividends, in my opinion. I want to tell an unfortunate story about something that happened today, just to make sure the public is aware of it. I took my kids today to a city park, Green Park, during our lunch break to play on the playground. And while we were there, my kids discovered hate graffiti. Someone had spray painted KKK on the little train element in the young children's playground area at Green Park. As you can imagine, that triggered some important and unfortunate discussions with my children, but we reported it immediately to the city public works staff, who I have to say responded with incredible speed, and I want to thank them for their responsiveness to go and remove the graffiti on the playground. But it continues to be a sad commentary on our world that this sort of thing continues to happen. We all know, or should be aware by now, that hate crimes are on the rise. And every time we find something like this, it should be a call to renew our commitment to stand against this hate and to foster understanding and not just tolerance, but inclusion in our wonderfully diverse city. We know that these things don't speak for our community. And again, I just want to thank our public works staff for responding so quickly. And hopefully we'll see fewer and fewer of these things as we move forward. And that's all I've got this evening.
Thank you for those comments, Ryan, and thanks for getting staff involved so quickly. I was also impressed by how quickly staff got moving. It makes us very proud. And I want to thank all the council members for their statements tonight. I'll echo them and not repeat them. And I will note that next week we have a work session to receive a briefing on art in public places. That will be right here on Zoom, Monday, October 26th. And the next regular session of the Mayor and Council will be on Monday, November 2nd. Again, right here on Zoom. We'll be on Zoom for a little while longer until things get back to normal. Next, we'll go to From the City Manager, Tanisha.
Thank you, Mayor. I also will not repeat what council members and yourself have laid out very well this evening as far as announcements are concerned. I will underscore that obviously COVID-19 unfortunately is on the rise again across the country, and we are seeing slight upticks here in Maryland and in our county. Want to remind people that there is a mobile testing site at Lake Forest Mall. There was actually a new date added to the schedule. It is one of the county's most popular testing sites, and we want to encourage our residents to take advantage of this opportunity for free testing at this site. So it's at Lake Forest Mall, and testing is now on Monday afternoons from 12 to 5 and Wednesday mornings from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So we encourage you to be tested and encourage you to continue to observe the things that we know how to reduce the spread of the disease. I will just then mention again that it is important to hear from our community with regard to Lake Forest Mall and the future of that property. It is one of the greatest opportunities facing the city right now, and we really want to have a lot of public input. The public engagement process, I have also been impressed by, and I'm glad that so many members of council and the mayor have been involved in that process as well. We hope to have good turnout for the public forums that will be virtual that were mentioned earlier today. And then I'll just mention also that coming up on October 24th, it is the 19th National Drug Take Back Initiative, which is an event that encourages residents to surrender unwarranted pharmaceutical or controlled substances. We know that when we don't dispose of these things properly, they sometimes end up in the wrong hands with accidental accidents and overdoses and misuse. So we want to encourage people to turn over those controlled substances in a safe manner, and they can do so at the Gaithersburg Police Station on October 24th between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And with that, Mayor, I will conclude my report.
Thank you, Tanisha. Tech team, if you could bring up Tom Lonergan, and we'll get our economic development update. Welcome, Tom.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Assuming you can. And I have a few items to update you on tonight. I'll try to get through them expeditiously. I wanted to mention that last week, I did attend the Maryland Tech Council's virtual industry award celebration and did want to pass along congratulations to Adaptive Phage Therapeutics, where they were recognized as the state's emerging life science company of the year. This is a company that's been on my mind of late, as I mentioned them just a few weeks ago. They're a clinical stage biotech company located at 22 First Field Road, and recently announced that the Department of Defense had awarded them almost $10 million for research development of multiple high priority vaccine candidates against COVID-19. And as an attendee at today's BioHealth Capital Region virtual forum, it was nice to hear about APT and many other Gaithersburg-based life science companies that are contributing to the region's strength and status as now the 4th largest biopharma cluster in the country, with a goal of reaching number 3 by 2023. Moving on, business closures have certainly dominated our headlines, but it's nice to highlight when doors are opening here in the city. Rooster's Men's Grooming Center, located at 20-C Grand Corner Avenue at Rio, did open for business today. The Gaithersburg store is the second Rooster's location. The first location was opened in Bethesda Row several years ago. Brewster's looks forward to hosting an official ribbon cutting with city officials and representatives of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce this Friday at 11:30, and hope to see you there. Next, last Monday, as you know, economic development staff presented an update on the current and expected impacts of the pandemic on the city's economy and some potential ways to prepare Gaithersburg for a post-COVID existence. Among those recommendations was economic development's working collaboratively with a few city departments, namely planning and finance, to evaluate potential regulatory changes and ensuring that the city is collecting revenue from all potential sources. I just wanted to take a moment to emphasize that our objective is to approach these tasks as a team and in partnership, and to express my division's appreciation to directors John Schlichting and Acting Director Janice Hartman for the efforts that they and their respective departments have already initiated towards those goals. And Sharon and I certainly look forward to working with them and their teams in the weeks and the months to come. Finally, and I promise this is finally, that Reopen Montgomery program is still funded and still accepting applications. Reopen Montgomery grants reimburse county businesses and nonprofits for expenses incurred to comply with state and county reopening requirements that have been established to prevent the spread of COVID and maintain public health. County Council passed a special appropriation and created the Reopen Montgomery program to provide grants of up to $5,000 per applicant. A total of $14 million has been appropriated, but as of last week, there was still more than $12 million remaining in the fund. As colder weather forces our restaurants and retailers to re-examine how they can accommodate patrons in the fall and winter months, this grant program could potentially provide meaningful assistance. Materials to create barriers, contactless payment systems, outdoor furniture and heaters, upgrades to HVAC systems. These are all things that could qualify as expenses that can be supported with these monies. You can either reach out to me directly or go to visit montgomerycounty.md.gov/biz resources for an application and for further instructions. That's all I've got tonight. Sorry if I carried on too long, Jeff.
Thank you, Tom. I will note that the news you bear every week or every other week is usually good, and it's always helpful. So take as much time as you need.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so next we're going to move on to ordinances, resolutions, and regulations. And tech team, if you can bring up Kevin Roman, and we will talk about the introduction of the CCOC ordinance. Welcome, Kevin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's great to see everybody. Before I begin, I want to just thank the public for coming out and speaking tonight on the topic. It's great to see the public engagement. And I also wanted to acknowledge that Mark Fine, the chairman of the CCOC, is with us today. And Tim Gottsinger is here as well from Department of Housing and Community Affairs.
Mark and Tim, welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, so as we heard earlier, before you tonight, we have an introduction of an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 of the City Code entitled Administration. It's Article 2 entitled Municipal County Relations, Section 2-6 thereof, entitled Exemption from Montgomery County Legislation and Regulations within the city as applicable and enforceable within the city limits, to include Chapter 10B of the Montgomery County Code entitled Common Ownership Communities. In the way of background, the proposed legislation amends 2-6 of the Gaithersburg Code of Ordinance to permit Montgomery County Code 10B to apply to all the common ownerships communities in the cities. As we know, common ownership communities include formal homeowners associations that are subject to governing documents, condominium associations, and cooperative housing projects. We have approximately 14,000 dwelling units that are defined as common ownership communities. That makes up a little bit more than half of our current housing stock. And the purpose of Montgomery County Code Chapter 10B is to provide board of directors, owners, and residents, excuse me, in residents in common ownership communities, certain resources, services, and protections. The resources include educational materials and training opportunities, not just for the board of directors, but also for the general members of the association. Services include technical assistance in the operation and function of the associations. That could be with elections, help with the elections, budgets, and reserve studies. Protections include a method of dispute resolution that provides due process that is legally binding. It's important to remember that the dispute resolution process is a two-way street. As a member can file concern against the association, as well as the association can file against a member. And as you may recall, at the March 9th Mayor and Council work session, Chairman Fine and Tim Gottsinger provided a presentation that promoted the CCOC's mission, which is education and training program, their operations, the registration requirements for associations, and the associated fee, which was talked tonight, was at $5 per unit in the association. So based on the information and the public comments provided at that work session, the Mayor and Council directed staff to prepare draft legislation for introduction that would have Chapter 10B of Montgomery County Code apply to the common ownership communities within the incorporated city limits of Gaithersburg. And just wanted to note that staff did receive recently several letters from at least 6 of our community associations. And since we're only at the introduction phase, we're not going to get down into the weeds of the substance of the content of the correspondence, but that correspondence will be made available to you in the outside correspondence packet in next week's meeting, the October 26th meeting. And with that said, we're requesting the Mayor and Council vote to introduce the ordinance, and if sponsored, notify the public of the scheduled public hearing on November 16th.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the overview. As Kevin said, this is an introduction. Who'd like to speak first, or Ryan Spiegel, go right ahead. I'm not surprised given that this is an initiative you've been pushing for quite some time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do want to just sort of emphasize before we get too deep down the road of talking about the substance, as Kevin mentioned, and as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, process-wise, what's before us tonight is simply whether or not to introduce draft legislation. Then in the coming weeks, we will have opportunity for the public to officially submit comments to the public record on this piece of legislation, assuming it is introduced tonight. And then some weeks after that, we will have a policy discussion and cast a final vote. Having said that, I wanted to ask our city attorney what the proper process would be, assuming that later this evening we introduce this legislation for consideration, to take the comments that were offered in the public comment period tonight, as well as any recent written correspondence that we've received, as well as the transcript of our March 9th work session, and put those into the official public record once it's opened, if we decide to introduce the legislation. What's the procedure there?
Assuming that the Mayor and Council would move to introduce the ordinance tonight, there should also be a motion to include those documents as part of the public record.
Okay, would that come before or after the introduction motion?
It would come after the introduction motion.
Okay, because at that point it would be introduced and the record would technically be open at that moment.
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, with your indulgence, I have a few other quick comments I want to make.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So again, we're not really getting too deep into the merits of the discussion, but I did just want to take a quick opportunity to briefly go over what we've talked about in terms of sort of just the high level general aspects of this legislation that we're considering. I've said many times during the last many years or so, 10 years maybe, that I've been spearheading consideration for the city to join the CCOC, that it is not intended to be punitive in any way to boards of HOAs or property managers. In fact, we've had some board members and property managers speak in support of it. I see it as a consumer protection issue, and I see it frankly as an equity issue, considering the structural power imbalance between HOAs and individual homeowners. And that's not a slight against the HOA board. It's just a recognition of the fact that under state law, HOAs have incredibly broad powers. And right now, we as a local government really can't do anything to assist the ability of HOA boards and individual homeowners to resolve disputes. I see joining this commission as a win-win that benefits both homeowners and boards to resolve disputes without lawyers and without complicated court proceedings at a lower cost. And I understand concerns by some expressed this evening that this is sort of quote unquote an additional tax. But I believe that without trying to belittle any of the struggles that many people are undergoing right now in this time of this pandemic and this economic downturn, that $5 a year is well worth it to give people, particularly people who otherwise don't have access to justice or have too many barriers to being able to bring a dispute to a court, to be able to get access to technical expertise and to resolve disputes at a lower cost and in a simpler, more clear-cut way, ultimately is actually saving people lots and lots of money and giving them more opportunity to access ways to equitably resolve disputes. And these disputes are about what is often the most important asset to a family or to an individual. It's their home. And of course, we've heard that it offers training for HOA boards, technical assistance to boards. And somebody mentioned earlier tonight that associations will still need lawyers to attend these mediations through the CCOC. That's actually not accurate. One of the benefits and the cost savings of the CCOC is that neither an association nor an individual homeowner needs a lawyer to attend these mediations and to perform these mediations. Whereas if you go to a court, under Maryland law, an association is required to have a lawyer in a court proceeding. I understand some HOA board members have some heartburn about this issue. If your board does everything well, you're good, but it gives you some additional resources and technical support and dispute resolution procedures for a relatively minor cost. If your board needs help, however, this will be a great way to improve things. And as we just heard, more than half of the housing units in the city fall within these common ownership communities. That's a lot of units and a lot of communities. Not everybody does it as well as others. And we need to think about this in a broader way. Gaithersburg is one of the only jurisdictions, if not the only, in the entire county not currently in the CCOC. Again, the costs are minimal and the benefits are significant. And on March 9th at our work session, I think we heard overwhelming support, including from some HOA representatives and property managers, as well as many homeowners. And that's why I asked Lynn earlier about how we incorporate everyone's comments into the record. We did get one or two inquiries about the possibility of creating our own customized commission for our city. But I think the staff analysis indicates, and I would agree, that it would be far less cost effective for us to try to stand up our own system and institution and commission here at the city level. And I just don't see a justification for reinventing the wheel when we've got an effectively operating county system with existing expertise. So I'm going to be supporting introduction this evening.
You want to make the motion?
Sure, I will move to introduce.
Mike?
I will second the motion to introduce and echo the comments of Ryan, Councilman Spiegel, on this. I think the strengths and benefits of this, our participation in the commission, outweigh the arguments against it considerably, and it's of benefit to both HOAs and to residents of those HOAs. So,
all right. So we have a motion to introduce. Neil, go right ahead.
So I think there are points to be made for all sides of this issue. And I think that what I heard tonight was a number of people in my neighborhood who are in favor of the city opting into this program, and virtually all of those people, if not 100% of them, live in the same condominium community. So I have to wonder if there's something specific going on there that that could be addressed in some way more expeditiously. I've heard a lot of complaints just over coffee about that particular set of condominium management groups. So I think that's something that should be addressed regardless of what we decide to do today, and because it seems to be affecting a lot of people, and I don't hear those same kind of complaints coming from the others. I think we heard from a lot of homeowners associations, and the correspondence I think was 100% against from the homeowners associations that submitted correspondence on the record via email or in today's packet. You know, having been an officer of the Kentland Citizens Assembly, both as a board member for a term and for a term as president, I know I had deep conversations with the management company the very first time. I think are we on the third or fourth time that this has been brought before the council? Anyway, no matter. Talking to the management company, they were concerned that while it's been portrayed that homeowners associations have all the power, in fact, when there's a resident that is causing issues in various ways, whether it's something that's interfering with the ability of their neighbors to live a peaceful and quiet life, or deliberately violating the standards of the community in some other way through construction or something else, there are many ways that those owners can delay and cause aggravation, and eventually not be held accountable by moving away. And the concern that the management company and that the HOA officers that I've heard from in recent times have had is that this process simply adds another layer, that regardless of whether it's several months or longer, then the homeowner or offending person or whoever still has the right to go to court, which is what they would do today as the next step. So it just adds another step, another layer, and so on and so forth. I'd also just like to point out that from the educational side there, long before the CCAOC existed, when I was on the Kentlands board and as Kentlands president, our organization was an active member of the Community Associations Institute, CAIonline.org, which, you know, the dues are just a couple $100 a year for the entire board, as much as $295 a year for a large board, or less for a smaller board, or $125 for an individual, regardless of whether they're a board member or a city official or whoever, that provides a monthly magazine, a national monthly magazine, a Washington, D.C. area monthly publication, and access to all kinds of online educational materials that are much more in depth than what I've seen coming out of our county. So I'm just wondering if this is not a solution that is, you know, above and beyond what is really needed in the real world if people just look for other ways to solve these issues. And, you know, considering that we'd be turning over jurisdiction to some extent over more than 50% of the housing units in the city to the county at a cost of about $90,000 a year based on the number of units, I'm just not particularly comfortable going forward with this process at this time.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Lorianne, did I see your hand go up? Go right ahead, Lorianne.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to staff for all of the materials and the presentation they shared. Having also been a member of my condo association, both as a member and former president, I did refer to the resources provided by CCOC for trainings and just to get up to speed on some of the issues that came before us. But given that this is a pandemic, I think Neil raised a good point about the undue financial burden that this extra layer of accountability that the counties, the CCOC would cause for our HOAs and condo associations. These are volunteers, and while this $5 per unit seems minimal, some of these communities can incur thousands of dollars in unforeseen budgetary expenses to meet the requirements set forth. And so given that there's affordable and accessible information available that will not encroach upon the individual communities and how they lead their associations, I don't think this is an appropriate time for this at this moment. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorianne. Rob, go right ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I'm kind of on the fence with this one. You know, I've served on my HOA board, and in doing so, I recognize both the benefit of having external resources to refer to, as well as standards being applied. But I also recognize that the HOAs in not only in our city but elsewhere, primarily volunteer organizations, and you know, the CCOC would place some modicum of an additional burden on an already volunteer organizations. And I've also been in a situation, either personally or witnessing, situations where an external body that's not a court and the expenses carried by a court would have been beneficial to the situation. So, you know, I see both sides here. And so, you know, when I'm faced with that kind of situation, you know, I think that the process dictates at least airing both sides of the issue and considering both sides of the issue before a final determination. You know, that being said, you know, I would not cast my vote to move forward on an issue as a process matter where I don't think I would vote for it in the end result. But that being said, I'm not convinced that it's right for the city, and I'd like to hear additional information from both the stakeholders, as well as the public. And then, you know, a small modicum of tilting this in favor of my vote is that this is a issue that Ryan has been talking about since I've got on the council. And so, you know, kind of in deference to him, you know, I'm going to vote today to allow introduction or support introduction and ultimately let the process go where it may.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second, and so I'm gonna call the roll. All in favor say aye, and the opposed say nay. Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Nay.
Councilmember Cesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales.
Nay.
Okay. The motion carries 3-2 with Council members Harris and Sales voting against. And then Ryan, did you want to make a motion to include those other parts in the record?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks to everybody for their thoughtful comments. I'd like to move that the correspondence and the public comments related to the March 9th work session, and I guess maybe the entire transcript or recording of the March 9th work session, as well as the public comments we received tonight and the correspondence related to the CCOC issue that we received recently in advance of tonight, all be included in the public record for this item.
Mike?
Second.
Okay, Neil?
I don't know if it's proper, but since this is not the first time or the second time even that this has come before the council, is it possible to include comments from previous iterations in the record as well?
Let me steer that question to Lynn Board.
I was going to say it would be possible. Staff would have to pull that. I mean, I'm sure we do have those records available somewhere. We'd have to do some research on the specific dates and to include the comments.
Correct. So I don't know if this is a question for you, Lynn, or if it's for Kevin or for Mark, but in previous years, has the fee, the $5 per unit, was that the same as it is now, or has that changed?
It was $3 per unit previously, and it's been bumped up to $5.
So Lynn, if the circumstances in a previous consideration of this were different, does that impact whether we should include that as part of our record?
I mean, that would certainly be in the discretion of the council, but there are some other changes in the program as well, as far as the training, the processes for the CCOC. So there have been, additional changes other than the fee since the last time the mayor and council considered.
Neil, is that something you still want to advocate for?
Yeah, I'd like to understand if the tenor of comments has changed over time in one direction or another.
Okay, so we have a motion from Ryan. And Neil, I guess, are you asking Ryan for like a friendly amendment? Is that how this works?
If other people think it's a reasonable request, it was just really a thought.
Yeah, I mean, as the move-in, I have no objection to it. I mean, I understand it'll require staff to go digging a bit, but I have no objection to, to other iterations of the comments from previous years when we've had other work sessions or other meetings about this issue to be included, as long as we make sure we're including everything from a particular session, so that we're getting, the full view of the comments that we received. But I have no objection to that, and so I'm happy to include that in my motion.
Other council members, where do you stand on this with the record? I'll call on you. We'll start with Rob. We'll go to Mike and then Lorianne.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I would think that the more recent testimony is more relevant for consideration. And then to the extent it's not an undue burden on staff to locate prior documents, then I'd be in favor of it. But if it's a heavy lift, if it's locked away next to the Ark of the Covenant in a big warehouse, I'd say, staff make a determination as to the best use of your time.
Great Indiana Jones reference. Mike.
Well, we never got even to the point of considering introduction in previous discussions, but I don't have any problem with bringing this to the record. I think that we'll hear basically the same arguments,
so
the same position we
clear,
heard tonight. So yes, I don't have any problem with that. So I will support the amendment to Ryan's motion.
Okay, and Lorianne?
I'm fine with the additional comments from past.
Okay, all right, so Tanisha, please go right ahead.
I'm just hearing from staff that once we get all the dates, it should not be difficult for us to compile the information.
Okay, thank you. So Lynn, how do we get this train back on the tracks here? Does Ryan just restate the motion with Neil's language? How do we need to do this legally?
Well, there's been a motion and Neil has requested an amendment to the motion, which the maker and the seconder of the original motion have accepted. So I think you're in a position where you can now just vote on the motion as amended.
Okay. Okay, great. So we have a motion. We have a motion and a second, a motion, an amendment, and a second. I will call the roll. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Cesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you all very much. And next, tech team, if you could bring up Sunil Prithviraj, and we're going to talk about the water park pump room renovation. Welcome, Sunil.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. This evening, I bring a resolution of the mayor and council authorizing city manager to enter into a contract for the design and construction services to renovate water park pump room. The water park was constructed in 1990, and majority of the equipment is still original to that construction. And we are operating with the core equipment that is built in 1990. So they have exceeded their useful life of 20 years. The filtration and the electrical system shows extensive deterioration, and pumps and motors show significant wear, requiring ongoing and regular repairs. The annual maintenance cost associated with providing a safe pool water quality that can meet the safety requirements of state of Maryland and Montgomery County requirements have been increasing. In order to provide a safe and reliable outdoor pool with the improved water quality, water circulation efficiency, and energy savings, replacement of a pump room equipment in its entirety is necessary. Due to the specialized nature of the work, as well as very constricted construction period, the design-build project methodology was selected. The project work scope includes demolishing existing pump room equipment in its entirety, design and construct a new pump room equipment, which includes new filtration system, water treatment system, pumps, motors, controllers, and safety devices, and also upgrading all electrical systems and the ventilation systems, new piping, valves, chemical feed system, chemical store system, and also paint interior walls, ceilings, and floors. The scope also includes 2 years inspection and maintenance services for the warranty reasons. The city prepared a request for proposal, RFP, to solicit a design build services. So we advertised RFP on August 21, 2020 on the city webpage and also in eMaryland Marketplace. In response, we received 2 proposals. We received a proposal from Paddock Swimming Pool Company for $697,361. We also received the second proposal from Lathorian LLC for $748,440. City staff evaluated proposals for firms' understanding of requirements, work plan, time management plan, experience, staff qualification, references, and price proposals. Based on the evaluation of city staff recommended awarding contract to Paddock Swimming Pool Company. City estimated the project to cost $680,000 to $700,000. This estimate was developed actually pre-COVID-19. We believe the COVID-19 had some effect on the cost itself. The project will be funded from FY21 Parks Capital Improvement Program. The fund also includes $335,000 program open space grant fund. And with this, I request to approving the contract to Paddock Swimming Pool Company.
Thank you, Sunil. Any questions or comments? Mike, go ahead.
So Sunil, thanks for that. And thanks for reminding us that we have a program open space grant as well. So just curious whether we've worked with Paddock before, whether they've worked with in the numerous county facilities that require similar equipment.
Yes.
And their track record.
Yes, actually our original pool was constructed by Paddock Swimming Pool Company. And they also have renovated our pool in 2011, but that renovation did not include any pump room equipment updates. They just basically did all the work in pool renovation. They added some pumps and they included UV system. They also have done most of the pools in Montgomery County. They have done recently a pool for Montgomery Village. So we visited that, we looked into their equipment, and we kind of had a better understanding what's the current trend, how we can improve our efficiency. So we took all of those put it into our solicitation to get the best value.
Well, they did a nice job on the expansion of the renovation and remodeling of the pool when we expanded in 2011. You know, I actually thought that the equipment had been replaced at that time, but I guess they added the UV filters or something at that point. But we got 20 years out of this system or longer, I guess. So it's certainly time. And the fact that they've already worked on this, they're familiar with it. That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just a clarification, the filtration system, the electrical system, ventilation system, they are nearly 30 years old. They were original back to 1990. And we can't buy parts to rebuild pumps anymore. So we always end up fabricating some custom sleeves or custom bearings to make it work. That's what we've been doing, the patchwork to get it going. So we came to a point that's no longer feasible.
Well, hopefully the replacement is going to be more efficient and actually save us some money on the back end, just in terms of operating. So, I mean, clearly we have to do this anyway. I don't think we can continue to jury rig repairs.
One of the requirements in our design is using energy efficient pumps and also using a variable frequency drives, because currently when pool is open, we also run pumps all night long. So by using a variable frequency drive, we can kind of throttle down our pumps and hence saving the energy. So that's actually part of the requirement in the design.
That's great. Thanks for adding that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I don't have any other questions.
Mike, you were sort of in and out there. I couldn't. Were you trying to say something?
No, I was. If nobody had any comments, I'll move the resolution.
Okay. It seems like no one has any comments. So we have a motion. Ryan?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. I will call the roll. Councilmember Spiegel?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Cesma?
Aye.
Councilmember Wu?
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales?
Aye.
All right, carries unanimously. Thank you, Sunil. Next, we have, we have our draft environment. So tech team, if you could bring up Dennis Enslinger, Rob Robinson, and Jess Kwasny. And we were going to talk about the I-495 and 270 managed lanes study and the draft environmental impact statement. Welcome, guys. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. It's kind of always a catch-22. You're always waiting to make sure you get brought on board since you're in the background all the time. But tonight, staff is asking if the Mayor and City Council would like to provide comment on the draft environmental impact statement, the DEIS for the I-495, I-270 managed lane study being conducted by the state. I did want to clarify for the members of the public that this DIS, or the draft environmental impact statement, is for the section of roadways south of the I-370 interchange. So this particular DEIS only involves about 1.5 miles of I-270, which is in the city of Gaithersburg. No portion, of course, of I-495 is within the city of Gaithersburg. Just to note that the state is still working on a draft DEIS for the northern portion of the I-270 project up to Frederick, or the I-70 interchange. So this would just be for the southern portion south of I-370. Staff has prepared a detailed memo summarizing the draft environmental impact statement and outlining the various options proposed in terms of alternatives. Rob Robinson is also on the call tonight as the long range planning manager, and he can answer specific questions also about the DEIS that council or the mayor might have with regarding to this. Again, this is 7 alternatives that have been summarized by staff. These were the alternatives that were retained for detailed study. Originally, there were 13 alternatives in the initial draft environmental impact statement. To kind of summarize briefly, alternative 1 is a no-build scenario. That's typical of all these studies. They consider a no-build option. Alternative 8, and the reason I explain why there's 13 originally is because the numbers aren't consecutive, is for 2 lanes, and of those 2 lanes, express toll lanes or ETLs would be on I-495, and 1 express toll lane would be on I-270 along with the high occupancy vehicle lane. Again, keeping in mind some of the terms that we're talking about, express toll lanes mean that anyone who drives in that lane pays the fee to drive in that lane. If you're actually talking about high occupancy toll lanes, which is the next alternative in 9, that would mean individuals who don't meet the high occupancy vehicle ratio. Typically that's been 3 now, not 2. They would need to pay the fee. And then if you're actually talking about, as we just discussed in alternative 8, high occupancy vehicle lanes, those would be only allowed for use for individuals that have high occupancy vehicles, but there is no fee associated with that. So alternative 9 is 2 high occupancy toll lanes for both I-495 and I-270. Alternative 9M, which is a variation on that, is 2 high occupancy toll lanes on west and east sides of I-495 and I-270, and 1 high occupancy toll lane on the top side of I-495. Alternative 10 is 2 express toll lanes on I-495 and I-270 plus 1 high occupancy vehicle lane on I-270. And then alternative 13B is 2 high occupancy toll lanes on I-495 and a high occupancy toll lane network on I-270. And then 13C is 2 express toll lanes on I-495 and an express toll reversible lane and 1 high occupancy vehicle lane on I-270. When staff did the review, and Rob can probably address a little bit about this, when we looked at the analysis, we do place an emphasis on the purpose and need study because that's what the federal government is basing the alternative options on. I know there's been a lot of discussion about why transit isn't a key component in this option. That was not a key component of the purpose and needs for the study. And so Rob might talk a little bit about that. And then again, the council's under no obligation to make comments. We did provide a recommendation based upon the purpose and needs and the impact on properties within our jurisdiction. There are a number of properties that would be impacted by some widening. And Rob can kind of list that alternative, which is alternative 9 or 9M. So Rob, I don't know if you want to kind of add a little bit more about the purpose and needs of this.
Sure, I can jump in. I didn't realize we were transitioning. So I think for a lot of the questions from staff's perspective, as we walk into these analysis, we sort of take a clinical multi-tiered look, as Dennis sort of mentioned. From the state perspective in the NEPA process, which is obviously a federal law, we look at the purpose and need, and the purpose and need for this project specifically was to accommodate existing traffic and long-term growth, enhance trip reliability, provide additional roadway travel choices, accommodate homeland security, and improve movements in goods and services. Of note here in the state of Maryland, much as we saw with the Purple Line and others, and as everybody is aware, especially with Dennis's presentation regarding the CTP 2 weeks ago, the state really doesn't have any money. So this has to be approached through a P3 program because there's really no money to do the visionary expansive build alternatives. So as staff, when we come into this, we sort of look at each alternative, how does it meet these purpose and need at a broad sense? And then, as Dennis mentioned, specifically because obviously I work for the city of Gaithersburg, my interest is more taking the knowledge that I have of the city and looking at mainly how this impacts the city of Gaithersburg. I mean, as the council is very much aware from our commuter trend surveys and from our visioning data analysis, not that many people, really workers, residents from the city of Gaithersburg, use I-270 to get to DC. As we know, only 10% of all trips go to DC. The vast majority of people stay in the immediate region. So with that, sort of looking, there's various metrics presented in the DEIS, in the memo presented to council. We present a bunch of different ones. So sometimes really for council's decision, it's hard for us to make a recommendation because council has to determine what is the metric that's most important to them. Going into this in discussions with Dennis, we felt that because the limited scope of impacts, essentially, 1.5 miles, what are the physical impacts is probably the guiding metric. Out of all the alternatives, basically with the build alternatives 9 and 10 pretty much function the same across various travel metrics, but it's really the physical impacts and the cost, and 9 comes out, a bit better. It has, let me go, Brian, if you could go to page 97, please. Or maybe not. Oh, there we go. So the chart taken from the analysis, as is sort of evident, the least amount of impacts is 13. And the reason for that is essentially just lane repurposing. There is no construction, but 13 overall really doesn't perform well in a lot of the travel time metrics. So, if you're going for what best meets purpose and need, it's almost a full acre less of impacts for 9 as opposed to 10. And so that was, going into this, if we, had to really choose, that maybe is the limiting factor for 9. Thank you, Brian. So with that, I know I threw lots of information within the memo. I'm happy to discuss certain things. I know the state has gone to some metrics that historically in the past we hadn't come across before, like travel time index, things along those lines. Both Dennis and I are happy to answer any questions, related to this.
Thank you both. We'll start with Neil.
So to me, the most important aspect of any project like this is basically throughput, which I guess the best analog for is the travel time index here. How many people, how much can we improve the volume of people moving at some reasonable rate of speed, given that the last time 270 in particular was improved was around 1990, just after I first moved to Gaithersburg. I remember the hassle of construction for about a year, and then suddenly you had a few years of good movement. My main concern is making sure that we add enough capacity so that we're not clogged up again in 5 more years. And so I'd really love to see if there's any data in here that I haven't found yet so far anyway, that shows how much capacity is needed now and how much capacity is needed projected to be needed in 10 or 20 years, given the increased population on an ongoing basis of 1% per year, where we're going to have several 100,000 more people in this county, let alone Frederick County. So without all that data, I'd lean toward probably 13B in terms of the numbers seem to indicate that the increased travel volume is increased the most there, but you can tell me if I'm reading the data wrong. So I'm very sensitive to the fact that there's impact on the acreage of various properties that result from a highway widening, and I understand that staff has leaned toward minimizing that impact, but that's kind of a us versus them kind of point of view, and I think this is a regional wide problem that we have to take a big picture approach to in order to make things better. the situation is terrible, and I'm looking for this project to make things less terrible going forward.
Thank you, Neil. We'll go with Rob, then Lorianne.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Two questions. The first question, it's probably a Rob question, is are we able to extrapolate from the various alternatives that are being proposed to move forward in phase one as to the impacts on phase two, as far as, for example, land taking?
The simple answer is no. Dennis and I had discussed this. So one of the challenges with the way they split this, especially given that the physical context of the existing roadway is very different. So while this does expand a little bit beyond the interchange at I-370, the challenge that I have is definitively stating, hey, whatever alternative comes in for the south is going to carry forward into the north. That's not necessarily true. There is the ability that there can be a transition, and going all the way back, as Councilmember Cesma and Mayor Ashman remember, going back to the original I-270 multimodal corridor study, that was the case. You know, the main trunk line of I-270 from Frederick down to 370 was one thing. And then when they did the additional study, you know, where they began all of this, they were looking at different alternatives. So while you might be able to, you know, draw a correlation that the strategy from the P3, it is a separate P3 contract from north to south. So it'll essentially be different, you know, design build operators with different expectations. There is the opportunity, outside of understanding there'll be some sort of managed lane, the configuration may not be the same. So obviously going all the way back to the multimodal corridor study, there were more takings going all the way back, you know, to that study. But so, but it was environmental justice community. So given the changes now, you know, that may not be true. So where, you know, we have discussions here, reversible lanes, while, you know, a decade ago weren't really fashionable, they may be fashionable for the northern trunk line going forward.
Okay, and yeah, so my concern would obviously be, as you stated before, phase two is the phase that would have more of an impact within the city borders. And then, you know, if we were to provide comment in support or opposition to any of the given alternatives, the more important impact, or the greater impacts, would be in phase two, and whether or not choosing any given alternative in phase one would necessarily either narrow consideration of certain alternatives in phase two or not. And it sounds like that's not the case, and that if we were to choose any given alternative to advocate for or against any given alternative in phase one, it would not constrain our advocacy for phase two or impact our advocacy for phase two. Is that?
I believe that to be correct. And again, the importance of phase two is it goes through 4 miles of the city. And as our data has shown, we have a vast number of workers who come from the north and west that actually use I-270 to get to jobs within the city of Gaithersburg.
Yeah, Rob, we've asked, Rob and I serve on a number of subcommittees for the phase two portion, the northern portion, and we've asked multiple times how the state's approaching kind of blending these two projects. And we've been told over and over again that one does not drive the other, that they would look at what the alternatives were for the northern portion separately, partly because the traffic's slightly different and the right of way is different too. So they may be more inclined to provide some reversible lanes in those options, but we don't have a clear picture. We had hoped, Rob and I had many discussions on this topic, that we at least would have had the final meeting of our subgroups. So we had some inkling what alternatives they were going to move forward to the detailed study, but that hasn't happened yet. You could, as council, provide comment that you are kind of withholding your recommendations until you see the northern portion, but are leaning one way or another on the other portion. That wouldn't be unheard of for us to make those comments. Eventually they'll be done. They may still be split into 2 separate P3s, but they could be done all together too. They've just divided the studies for their own convenience.
Okay, so Dennis, that's an interesting recommendation. My concern there would be, in doing that, in essentially deferring comment on phase one, pending phase two, do we risk losing the opportunity to comment on phase one because of the timing of things.
You would still have to comment, but you could say, you know, we're kind of leaning this way, but we believe that to make a full recommendation on, you know, the alternatives, we really need to kind of know what's happening north. It's not unheard of. At the Consolidated Transportation Plan meeting recently, Montgomery County alluded to this, that they were likely to ask the state to combine the two projects, given where they both are at this particular point in time. I'm not sure that's going to happen based on the information we've received from the state. But you could say, look, alternative 13C or 9M9 seem reasonable. But in the overall context, it would be helpful for the city of Gaithersburg to know what happens in the northern portions, something like that.
And to jump in also, one of the things, you know, council may consider, if you don't feel comfortable going, you know, I like this geometry, there is the fundamental policy issue of hot lanes versus ETL, that, you know, will be considered in both phases. So again, high occupancy toll is these dedicated managed lanes that if you have 3 people in the vehicle, you don't pay the toll. ETL, you could have a clown car with 20 people and you're still paying the variable price toll. So, you know, from a policy standpoint, that is something that will impact both phases that council may want to, you know, limit their comments to.
Okay. And so my second question is, are we considering, or how are we considering the state's experience with other local P3 projects, namely?
They would indicate, and you know, this has come up before. It's not a known question based upon where the purple line stands at this particular point in time. They would argue that road P3s are completely different than transit P3s, such as the purple line, and that you know, there are very few transit P3s out there, but there are a lot of roadway P3s that have been successfully operated. You know, Virginia is the closest example that seems to be operating well. Again, it's always a test of time, right? Because that just opened recently within the last 2 years. So that's what they would say to that particular question.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Lorianne, and then Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Dennis, you answered my last question about the P3 cooperation and viability. So thank you for that. Thank you, Rob, for your comments as well. I was wondering if you had any additional information about the 2 parks that would be impacted with the recommended bill. I saw in the notes that 2 parks could be impacted, but didn't see which parklands.
Brian, if you could go to page 104, please. So on the screen before you is the diagram of the impacts, and we used alternative 10 because it is the greatest. So the purple line is the ultimate limits of disturbance. So with Malcolm King Park, and I always draw a blank on the Morris Park, you can see it's just on the fringes. And, you know, reality is shown, you know, at least my experience has been at the DEIS level, they always show the worst case scenario limit of disturbance. And as you get into actual engineering, as you move forward, that shrinks. So for all the build alternatives, the impacts to Morris and Malcolm King Park are exactly the same. And it's all related to new slip ramps coming off I-370 that allow you to get into the managed lanes. So it's direct access ramps. So it's spreading stuff out. The state historically is not apt to just get construction easements. They'll purchase stuff in fee, as we saw with Watkins Mill Interchange. You know, sometimes they bought more land than they actually needed, but it was needed, you know, from their perspective at the 30% design plans to do the work. So looking at this, you know, obviously we want more details as this moves along through the process. But seeing the amount of impacts and knowing that it's a lot of this, the impacts that are shown are related more towards stormwater management. You know, I wish I had more details. We reached out, in fact, to SHA to try to get more details. and we were directed back to the pages we presented in our staff analysis. So that's about the extent I have.
Okay, thank you. And then I wasn't sure if we would have any historical resources that would be impacted.
The answer is no, we do not. If it was farther south, and there may be a possibility, we know obviously for the second phase, there'll be a lot of discussion because, you know, we also have the battlefields and everything else. But if you go to within the packet page 106, that is the complete inventory of all impacts for the entire trunk lines on all the alternatives.
Thank you. And my last question was about, given that the recommendations include the hot lanes and the, what are they called? The
express toll lanes.
Thank you. Express toll lanes. Have we looked at the financial impact or an equity analysis regarding how this would impact certain populations?
They don't, with NEPA studies and DEISs, they don't get to that level. What the debate has been is potentially the model for the tolling, whether it be variable priced or such as you see with the ICC now, where it's a fixed price ETL system. Obviously, the state is very much aware of what has gone on in Virginia, you know, where you hear the stories of the mixing bowl, the $30 a mile tolls. I think while it's not definitively stated, the state has sort of alluded to the fact that Maryland Department of Transportation, the ones who control the tolls, probably will be establishing a cap. So that has to be built into the P3 contract. But how that impacts, because the philosophical thing is, if you have the money to use the ETL or, you know, managed lanes, you are now freeing up capacity in the free general purpose lanes. So from an equity standpoint, they don't really view this, you know, in that the same light as they would a property taking.
Yeah, they would not have to do that type of analysis. There is analysis in the draft DEIS that talks about the rates they anticipate to be charged, but I will tell you it's all over the board. Recently, there was an article in the Washington Post that talked about this. Some ranges were from $2 a lane mile to 77 cents, you know, a lane mile. That's kind of where the state has indicated they would like to be, is in that 70 cents range. But it probably would be dynamic, at least at this point. But they're not required to do that analysis because, as Rob pointed out, the theory behind the ETLs and the high HOTs is that it frees up other space within the free portions of the system.
Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Okay, we'll go to Mike.
Okay, thanks guys for the summary on this. You know, going way back, I was one that argued that phase one stopped too soon. It should go all the way up to basically at least the Watkins Mill interchange, or probably even up to Middlebrook or Germantown Road. Either way, I don't believe that decisions made on phase one will have minimal effect on phase two. I think it more or less dictates what happens on phase two, especially through basically between 370 and Watkins Mill. And then the other thing from your summary and that staff provided, I think you didn't talk much about residential impacts, but let's look at page 105, I think. Yeah, packet page 105, which shows the area north of 370. So this phase one actually goes north of 370, almost halfway to the distance to the Muddy Branch overpass. And this is where the residential impacts are. And they're on the Brighton West and the Brighton East community, in which there are, like, you know, if the limits of disturbance are outlined by that pink line, then those neighborhoods are going to be disturbed, and it's likely that some of those residential properties are going to be should probably be bought out. That impacts those existing communities, and I think I was a little bit surprised that staff didn't discuss that, except to suggest that the right of way is already wide enough to accommodate any added lanes, regardless of whether they're hot or ETLs or whatever. So and then going further, if you continue in what would be phase 2, going north beyond Muddy Branch and up to beyond exit 10 to 124, or even to Watkins Mill, the next residential community to be disrupted would be Londonderry, which isn't actually in the city, but you can see that those apartment buildings, you can see this on exhibit on page 105. Those apartment buildings are very close to 270 at that point. And I hope everybody can see that from the figure. If you blow that up a little bit, you'll see it better. But so, there are residential impacts within phase 1 within the city, Gaithersburg, and there are probably likely to be additional impacts in the most southern part of phase 2. Speaking to the, you can see that right there. There's the community. Look at the pink line on the west side of 270, which is the upper part of the picture. And then the east side of 270 also impacts the residential neighborhood. I think that's Brighton East. I don't remember if that is or not.
Mike, can you let staff speak to that point?
Yeah.
Within the DEIS, which is what we have to go by, again, shown on page 97 from the chart that we took from the study, there are no relocations within the city of Gaithersburg. The grand total of residential impacts for the option shown here is 1.4 acres for everything. And the limit of disturbance, again, could be anything from just, stacking of grading while they do construction. It does not mean it's a permanent disturbance. So that's what we were looking for. Other areas of the county and in Prince George's County, given with alternatives, there are actual residential takings. This made clear, with the blow up, there is no impacts to individual lots. It's common open space, ownership space, green space within these communities. So, individual lots and buildings are not touched, with this.
Yeah, it's fine. You can say that, but I think you need to let those communities know where their property sits relative to what the limit of disturbance is, and let them have their say in this as well. So, that's what we have to address. That's who we represent. And so then, I would note that the article in the Washington Post, they talking about the tolls that are possible, apparently buried in the 8,000 page report, that could be as high as $3.26 per mile, I believe, which would be a toll of over $50 from on 270 all the way to the Legion Bridge. So, that's one estimate, and we know what the state would like, but because it's a P3, I assume the P3 is the private part of this partnership is going to have a lot of say, because they're doing this as a profit center for them to recover their costs, but also make some money. So I think that's another implication. So I think those are the issues. I certainly do want us to acknowledge that I see that limit of disturbances impinging on residential areas, both on the east and west side of 270. I'm less worried about the taking of parkland, because it's there's still plenty of park in both of those parks that would be undisturbed, or the limitations of that disturbance would be pretty small. But I'm more concerned about the threats to these residential communities, and then you can see that where that line stops is where phase one ends, but you can, it's not difficult for one to look at where phase two begins, where it's going to have impact on another residential community. And that would be it basically once you get past Clopper, north of Clopper on 270. That wouldn't, it wouldn't have, there aren't any other residential communities until you get to, well, I don't know when the next one would be, but those are the residential impacts within the city between phase one and phase two. I think the idea that we would defer our final recommendations until we see what phase two has some risks. Like I said, I'm still unhappy that, you know, phase one doesn't go all the way to basically to the northern boundary of Gaithersburg, or east to the new, or at least to the newest interchange, which added actually quite a bit of land that would accommodate, or basically paved ground that would add to the width needed for those lanes north of Clopper, north of 370. And I think the other thing is that it doesn't really consider the traffic, the loading impacts of the Watkins Mill interchange onto 270, especially southbound. A lot of those people will actually be traveling down 270 to get to 370 so they can go to Metro, or to go on the ICC to go east to employment centers in the east or whatever. So those are some issues that I had.
All right, so I want to sort of rein this in a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the question before us is whether we write a letter or give testimony on this. By show of hands, council members, who wants to submit a letter or testimony on the draft environmental impact statement? Okay, I see a majority. Okay, and then the question becomes, what do we say? And I think this is a more difficult question because I'm hearing a number of different viewpoints here. Go ahead, Neil.
So I think the most important thing to say is that we do not support the no build option.
Yeah.
Which is being supported by some jurisdictions to our south. I think it's very mission critical that something gets done regardless of what it is.
Okay, by show of hands, who agrees with that statement? I agree with it. We shouldn't have a no build option. All right, I see a majority of council. Okay, so that'll be part of it. Who else has a point that needs to be made in this?
I think I just laid a couple out.
Well, you laid a few out. I don't.
Well, there are residential impacts that we need a better explanation of the residential impacts. I think we also need to understand that phase one, look, I don't believe it when they tell us that what decisions made about phase one are going to have minimal or are not going to have considerable impact on decisions that will be made about phase two. I don't believe that.
I think we could structure something, because I kind of heard consensus on that we would like more connectivity between the two phases and hope that the state would take that into consideration. That seemed to be a consensus from everybody. I think we can work that in to the language. In terms of Mike's comments, you know, one of the things is we could work in, if everybody's amenable to it, I think it's Brayland Court is really the area that's impacted the most, Mike, along that section.
Okay.
The actual northern portions or the upper portions, it actually follows the existing right-of-way that exists along the corridor. It's really the lower portions where their proposed right-of-way kind of differs from existing. And so that seems to be the biggest impact area. We could bring attention to that and say, we're still concerned about the impacts along this section, especially down by Brayland Court, I think is what that street is called. If there's a consensus on that item. It didn't
Look,
sound
I
like.
guarantee you, if you show this, you know, if, once this is shown to the public and the residents that live east and west of 270, we're going to hear more about how they look at these potential impacts. Whether or not it really is going to be land that will be disturbed by construction or addition of those lanes. So that's what we have to be ready for and ready to defend at this point. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we address that particular issue.
Okay, all right, point made. Lorianne, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that minimal impact to residential and green spaces are prioritized in whichever alternative is approved.
Okay, Rob?
Yeah, I agree with both what Lorianne and Mike said. As far as this question of whether we conditionally submit and then try to defer to the second phase, I mean, I leave that to staff to figure out which way would give us the most leverage in impacting opinions. And then I don't know if this is relevant, but we could use this again as an opportunity to advocate for mixed modal transportation. I know it's not directly relevant to the NEPA study and the phase 1 boundaries, and maybe we could even talk about whether or not it'll impact the future monorail that's going to come through this area.
Okay, Ryan, go ahead.
Just a comment, it might be a bit early and it might not necessarily be something that we need to include in this particular letter. But, you know, one thing we ought to consider here is the cost of relocating all the utilities that's going to be an issue with this project. And, you know, we might want to consider making a statement, if not now, then at some point down the road in this process, that, you know, the P3 ought to be covering that cost as opposed to the ratepayers, i.e. the city residents, having to absorb that cost through their utilities for those capital projects that are going to be necessary with respect to the utilities. So something to think about. I'm not sure, maybe staff has some thoughts as to whether or not that's an issue that we address down the road or whether we put it in a letter now. But I think we ought to encourage that the financial impact to our city residents who are the ratepayers on those utilities is minimized or you know, basically held harmless because otherwise, you know, the way utilities work is when they're required to pay that significant additional capital project cost, they pass it on to the ratepayer.
I know that's been a discussion, not so much in this particular section that we're talking about here, but along the 495 section and WSSC main water line in that area. I think the P3 in that particular area was being required to relocate it based upon how the easements were granted. So Ryan, a lot of it has to depend on how the easements were granted or if they're actually specific dedications for that particular line or if it's in some other easement. But is there consensus on including something like that in the overall initial letter? Kind of taking Judd's approach of taking the items that are bringing up and kind of voting on so we have a little bit more direction.
I mean,
council members?
Oh, are we raising our hand? Or?
Yeah, raise your hands. If you like that point. Okay, I see a majority. Go ahead, Dennis, conclude that.
And we're not voting, right? We're just getting consensus.
This is just general direction.
I just want to, you know, make sure that was clear.
Yeah.
So far, what you know, to kind of wrap it up is the no build option. We would mention the connectivity between the two phases is really important to Gaithersburg. Reducing the residential and impact and parkland impact along the corridor in this section, transit options, and then also a discussion a little bit about making sure that the P3 is responsible for the relocation of any utilities associated with this particular project as opposed to having the utility be responsible for that. those are the items I've heard kind of from a consensus standpoint.
Anybody have anything else that needs to be added to this? Going once, going twice.
If we add that piece about the utility, there's nothing really precluding the P3 from charging for. I mean, they're going to recover their costs. So we should probably work on that language.
Yeah, I would assume the P3 is going to want to recover the costs. I think Ryan's comment was to make sure that the overall ratepayers for WSSC or PEPCO aren't paying the overall cost for that relocation, but the users of the P3, those individuals who are actually using either the ETLs or the hot lanes, they're the ones responsible for recapturing that cost rather than spreading it over the general population. I think that's what you were referring to, Ryan. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's pretty accurate. Thanks.
All right. Thank you guys very much. Tech team, if you leave Dennis on screen with us for a moment, because I know he has something under other staff, but from the city attorney, anything, Lynn?
Nothing further this evening.
Okay. Dennis?
I had two items I wanted to let the council and the public know about. One is as part of our regular kind of fall items that staff typically tracks, Montgomery County Public Schools Superintendent recommendations for the capital budget is coming up soon. This would cover the fiscal years of 2022 through 2027 in the terms of their capital improvement program. Our current understanding is that won't be released until October 26th, which would be next Monday. We have typically, or the city has typically provided comment on the superintendent's recommendations, in particular to what improvements would be made to schools within the city of Gaithersburg. This year in particular, I think we all know that last year the recommendation included Crown High School site, but when it got through the whole county process, the Crown High School site was delayed. So my anticipation is, based on discussions with Montgomery County Public Schools, is that they were probably going to put that back in again. We wanted to give you the heads up and the public the heads up that, you know, there are going to be comment periods for that. We would bring that information to you on November 2nd. And then there are two hearings scheduled, actually one for the 2nd and one for the 5th. We have asked to be on the 5th hearing so we could provide those comments to the school board when they're presented. And then the second item is also related to Montgomery County Public Schools. I wanted to let the mayor and council know, and I think they're quite aware, but the public might not know that the public schools have released the Gaithersburg Elementary School number 8 boundary study options. The options can be found on Montgomery County's public school website. Tonight, actually, the county, the public schools held another kind of forum or question and answer session. My understanding is it went well because I had an email conversation with staff members who were at that. They will actually hold another session in Spanish tomorrow night to answer questions about the options. Staff will be putting together a summary of the options and asking if mayor and council, similar to tonight, would like to provide comment on the options. This will also be placed on the November 2nd meeting. I will kind of note as a summary, the options currently under consideration by Montgomery County Public Schools are very positive for the surrounding neighborhoods, both for how the attendance will work at the new elementary school, but also some changes that would happen at Forest Oak Middle School related to the boundary studies. In addition, it's really compatible with the city's thoughts and even, you know, the school district's thoughts on walkability for those students who would be able to walk to elementary school number 8. We would encourage members of the public to look at the options and provide comment directly to the Montgomery County Public Schools through their website. They actually have a survey going on. I believe it started tonight, and then they're looking for a 2-week response period. And that would be it.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm glad you brought that up. We certainly, I know the council and I have all taken a look at the boundary study options, and we're very encouraged by the starting point for the conversation. It really, as you mentioned, jives well with the position of the city the entire time, and reflects our advocacy, but also the advocacy of the public. And so so far so good. Look forward to discussing it in more detail on November 2nd. And with that, I will again note that our work session next week on art in public places, Monday, October 26th. Please join us in the next regular meeting of the Mayor and Council on Monday, November 2nd. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.